CoSA consultant. I'm pleased to welcome you today on CoSA's behalf. Before we get started with the formal program, I'd just like to take another minute to remind you of the housekeeping items before we get started. Please use our chat box for questions or communications during the webinar today. We'll be monitoring it during the webinar, and we'll also be using it when we get to the question and comment period toward the close of the presentation. So since we are at the very beginning, we're just going to go on and get started. I am serving as host and moderator today. So we are proud to present the Preservica Shop Talk webinar today, Innovations in Digital Preservation, with Lori Ashley and John Tilbury of Preservica. Lori is in industry marketing, and John is the founder and chief technology officer for Preservica. Before they get started, I'd like to go over briefly the agenda. Following this welcome and introductions, they will put on their program, which is Digital Preservation Today and Technical Innovations and Case Studies. Following the conclusion of their presentation, there will be a question and comment period for everyone to participate in. And at the end, we will have the usual information from CoSA on upcoming programs and webinars still to come for the remainder of this year and other announcements. So with that, I am going to welcome once again Lori and John, and I'm going to turn it over to Lori. And let's see here. And we're going to say yes, Lori is now the presenter.
That's great. Thank you, Mary Margaret. It's been a really eventful year so far for Preservica and the digital preservation community. And so John and I are delighted to have this touch point with CoSA today. Let me just advance this slide here. Let's see. Maybe I need some help here.
Okay. You can use your page up or page down keys, or over on the left-hand side, you can go up and down with an arrow over there on the left-hand side of the screen. Let's see, I'll just go on and push you up there.
There you go. Thank you so much. So as Mary Margaret said, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are today and some of the highlights of our year. And then John's going to follow with some case studies and technical innovations. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations to CoSA on receiving the 2018 SAA Distinguished Service Award, a prestigious and well-deserved acknowledgement of the outstanding work and service that you all provide to the profession and to the public. Oops, let's see. Here we go. Okay. Just go back here. Where are we going? Okay. Thank you. I hope that all of you are well and gearing up for the midterm election cycle and the inevitable churn that we will all face as we race towards the holiday and the year end. So our thoughts and best wishes, of course, are with you all. On behalf of my Preservica colleagues, please let me express our appreciation for the continuing opportunity to collaborate with CoSA. I'm going to take a few minutes of your time today to share highlights of our year and to speak to the current state of digital preservation. John will then give you a look at the technical innovations that he and his team have been working on before we open up the floor for questions and discussions. The picture on this slide was taken at our global user group meeting, which took place mid-April in Oxford. The very handsome, burly man in the center is Darren Benson, who heads up our software engineering team. And I think in this photo, he just does this great job of reflecting the pride that all of us at Preservica feel supporting the work of more than 180 archival institutions around the world to protect, preserve, and provide access to valued digital collections and resources. In the public sector, this includes national, pan-national, federal, city, state, and local government archives. Our North American User Group meeting, a full day's program for the very first time, was held during the Archives 2018 conference and featured presentations on archive space synchronization, bulk metadata editing, and content harvesting through APIs. This summer, we kicked off a Be More, Achieve More campaign, documenting the innovation and work that digital archivists and librarians are doing to process backlogs and respond to growing digital collections and user demands. A diverse and engaged user community is so very vital to Preservica's success because it's the user community that helps to inform our product management efforts and investments. For Preservica, this means intelligent design and software engineering rather than a reactive or somewhat semi-controlled evolution of the product. It also means constant investment and innovation and the company culture and discipline to build the right product. Government records management and access is at the core of a democracy. And when this information is recorded in digital formats, it is at a much higher risk of being lost or becoming unreadable than information in analog formats. So in addition to all the long-standing requirements for citizen access, privacy, protection, and transparency, the fact of technology obsolescence provides clear motivation to develop more coordinated, integrated approaches and technology solutions to support the entire records lifecycle management. This is a reality that all of you face today, and it is truly an awesome responsibility. Preservica and CoSA share a commitment to preservation and access to government records. And we all understand that digital content requires a different approach than traditional IT archiving to ensure government records and publications without analog surrogates can survive time, technology, and administrations. These quotes from Gartner, the analyst firm that chief information officers listen to, provide some measure of comfort, I hope, that the message about what's required to truly future-proof valued digital content is going out to some key stakeholders and resource allocators. Two institutions in the CoSA community that have been very, very generous in sharing their progress and approaches with Preservica are the Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives and the Texas Digital Archive. If you haven't had a chance to browse their online collections recently, please check back with them to see the state of the art. You may be interested to learn about how the Boston City Archives launched and is quickly expanding their digital archives. Like many of you, the City Archives supports both records management and archival functions with very limited IT resources. Under the direction of Marta Crilly, the City Archives is addressing its backlog of digitized historical and administrative materials, have automated the harvesting of snapshots of the city's websites, and is increasingly engaging with record creators to facilitate timely and efficient born digital record transfers. This has helped to elevate the visibility and value of the archive collections and will hopefully bolster sustainable support and funding going forward. Marta spoke at the conference in Washington on how the Digital Archives metadata is being shared with the Digital Public Library of America, making the city's rich heritage and resources available to a wide national audience of students, citizens, and researchers. This Shop Talk session was designed to provide an opportunity for Preservica to touch base with CoSA members and to share case studies and innovations. I'd like to describe a commercial innovation that Preservica launched and which is beginning to gain some increased interest. That's our consortium program. To make digital preservation capabilities affordable and within the reach of not-for-profit institutions, we can now offer group pricing discounts to communities with shared interests. There are 3 consortia operating today, so if you'll indulge me, I'll briefly describe and share their stories. Our first consortium customer was LIPA, the Legal Information Preservation Alliance. LIPA is a nonprofit consortium of more than 130 academic, federal, state, and public law libraries working on projects to preserve print and electronic legal information. Digital librarians, of course, face similar challenges to CoSA, and LIPA has a number of collaborative efforts advocating for change across all levels of government to address how legal materials are created, managed, maintained, preserved, and accessed. The Dorset History Center is a consortium of archives and records center for local government authorities in the southwest of England. Their collections include council meeting minutes, vital records, library resources, oral histories, prison records, electoral registries, photographs, and school records. The newest consortium is the Archives of Michigan Consortium. This is a multi-tenancy consortia led by Michigan History Center's Mark Harvey. Northern Michigan University is a local government records depository and joined two existing Preservica customers, the Michigan History Center and Michigan Technological University, to form the group. Very briefly, there are two options for a consortium: shared single or multiple tenancies. In the shared single tenancy, members share a Preservica CE instance and the total available storage. Each member can contribute content to be curated and managed by the lead organization. Content is viewed by members and the public through universal access. In the multiple tenancy model, each member has its own CE instance. Each member's content is private and cannot be accessed by other consortium members unless made available for public access in universal access. I should also note that catalog synchronization is not available in the consortium model. But hopefully there are so many institutions that need digital preservation capabilities that we're hoping that this alternative to come together as a community will be useful and will help to advance digital preservation capabilities for small institutions. CoSA members, of course, understand that a digital preservation system differs in many important ways from static archives, backup systems, and live content management systems. Records and metadata managed in a system that's purpose-built to the ISO 14721 standard are ingested, actively preserved, and available for search, access, and audit for as long as they are required. Even with a purpose-built digital preservation system in place, the challenge remains to get the content that's been appraised for the archives and has met its upstream retention and disposition requirements headed to the repository in an efficient and timely manner for processing and ingest. This is the focus of some of the Preservica's technical innovations, which John will cover. This year, Preservica and CoSA are collaborating on a research project to better understand where and how permanent government records and publications are being managed upstream in the enterprise digital ecosystem. This effort to begin describing the backlog is in response to the call to action in CoSA's A National Risk Report, and will leverage the relationships that CoSA has established through the Access Project with key stakeholders like NASCIO and COSLA. Given the midterm elections and near-term release of the ARM 2018-19 questionnaire, the research team recommended to the CoSA board that we issue the broader survey through the partner organizations early in 2019 once new administrations are in place. A very short pre-survey to CoSA members will be issued in the next few weeks to solicit input for the scope and participants. We are also hoping to get input from COSLA and NASCIO members before staff and elected official turnovers. And with that, I would be happy to turn it over to John Tilbury, Preservica's Chief Technology Officer.
Thank you, Laurie. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm now going to go through some of the changes that are happening in digital preservation as we look forward. As Laurie mentioned, we've got a fairly good common understanding of what digital preservation is now, based on OAIS and lots of sort of academic type studies and initial products such as ours. But things are changing, and they're changing because of the tidal forces that are applying to this technology area. This is a restaurant in La Jolla, California, where one of the digital preservation conferences was held a few years back. I didn't take this photo, but it just shows you can't stand in the way of nature. And this is what I'm hoping to show you with digital preservation as well. So, if I can make it move. No, I'll make it move the wrong way, apologies. Right, our vision for digital preservation is a world where active digital preservation is business as usual, seamlessly integrated in the systems that manage and protect the most valuable digital information. There's a few key words here. It's the seamlessness, it's business as usual, it's normal. It's not the province of experts, it's just something that happens. And then you get a world where the potential of our digital memory is harnessed to enrich and protect our cultural, social and economic political lives. But to make this a reality, we've got a lot of work to do. And we've got to start looking at some of the forces that are driving digital preservation. The first is technology. And historical archives or state archives or any sort of archives or library or memory institution is not immune to this. In fact, they can benefit from it enormously. When we first started our digital preservation journey back at the National Archives, right at the start of the millennium, cloud had not been invented. We didn't know what cloud was, but now it's a routine part of everyday life that a lot of state archives are using as part of digital preservation technology. Also, coming up on the rails is blockchain. A lot of people talking about blockchain. A lot of people talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Application programmer interfaces are ways that programs can talk to each other. That's another big buzzword as well. And so these things all give us opportunities to develop better digital preservation programs. However, on the flip side, information diversity is becoming more of a problem. Information is becoming more and more complicated. It's held in more and more different places and has more and more different forms. And that makes preservation more complicated if you're going to rely on purely manual methods. So before, you could rely on all publications for a governor's office to go via the press office. Whatever the press office put out, that is the official communication with the world. Now we need the press office and the Instagram channel and the governor's Twitter feed and whatever went out on the YouTube channel and the recordings that the personal recordings people made, etc., etc. So it just shows you how diverse information is becoming now. The next driving force is compliance. The rules are getting stricter and stricter and more complicated. We've seen with Capstone that rules are quite clearly defined for email, but there are so many other rules. There are state rules, there are federal rules, there are business rules relating to health and safety. There are standards coming left, right, and centre, and this is a tidal force. We're not going to get more relaxed. Whatever the political government, national or local, rules are becoming more and more strict. The rule book is getting larger, and they apply to digital preservation as well. There's always a discussion on the economics of digital preservation. Much of the focus has been on cost. How can we drive costs down? Hence the reason for cloud-based solutions, for example. But more and more, we're appreciating that this is a cost versus value equation. What is the value that digital preservation can provide to your institution? What is the improvement in your relationships with your electorate or your stakeholders? What is the efficiency gains to your organization? What is the prestige that you can improve in terms of the usage of the content you've so carefully put together? So the value side of it is something that's becoming more and more appreciated as the collections grow and their diversity improves. And the other is the changing face of the users. When digital preservation started, we really thought about power users, about expert users who really understood what digital preservation was. and could talk digital preservation language to each other at technical conferences, and sort of binary compatible conversations took place. But really, we're more and more moving towards non-expert users. Now, non-expert consumers of the information that is preserved quite clearly just want to access things and don't care about OIS models. They just want to find stuff and use it. But more and more, the people building the collections and deciding what goes in them, they don't have the time or expertise to apply digital preservation techniques. They just want a magic box to do things. And that's no disrespect to them. They just have many other jobs on. And they just want it to work so they can get on with their primary function. And these are all the things that are pushing digital preservation technology and practice in certain direction. So let's look at some of the results of this and some of the work we're currently doing to explore the boundaries of how this will pan out. Here are 5 areas where we're working on to enhance the state of the art in digital preservation. We're looking at how programmer interfaces can be used for integration between systems. We're looking at the automation of content harvesting and how content can automatically be acquired and preserved. We're looking at how content can automatically be classified, and that classification can then drive the content through the system. We're looking at how we can improve provenance and proof and thus trust of the data once it is retained in the system. And we're looking at digital preservation best practice, how we can all pool our ideas and work together on best practice so that it can automatically apply to the content that we're protecting. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So programmer interfaces. When we first started out developing digital preservation systems, they were quite monolithic. And if someone wanted an enhancement, it had to be added as code onto the server and linked into the system. And this had a number of difficulties. First, it was quite difficult. It's quite difficult to do. You have to be really quite an expert programmer to do it. Secondly, it made the servers really very fragile. And every time you upgraded a version, that code stopped working. We had to test 30 or 40 different variants of the system and try and keep them working with every upgrade. And that wasn't just our system. All systems were like this, and they became very clunky to move forward in an arena where changes are happening at an incredible rate. Now, programmer interfaces allow programs to talk to each other over the internet using well-established protocols. And thus, if you want to add extra features to your preservation system, you can talk to it using the programmer interface, and you can read and write stuff, and you can do clever things within the system without actually needing to change the system itself. So, for example, if you don't like our access system and you want to do something really clever, for example, pay to view, or to integrate the content into an existing website, use the programmer interface we provide to embed your content in your website. That's absolutely fine, and we have lots of examples of customers doing this. I think Michigan are currently going through a process of building their own content delivery platform using our programmer interfaces, and we fully support and back that. In fact, we use our programmer interfaces for our own interface, and we just make that all that source code available to anyone who wants to develop it and they want to take it in a different direction. They can be used to upload content. So if you want to get content out of a particularly special place and send it into Preservica or any other digital preservation platform of your choice, there are programmer interfaces available for you to do that. So you can write a program that gets the data out of your special information system wherever it is, prepares it into a particular form and sends it directly into the preservation system without needing to change the preservation system. It does. The information is prepared before it arrives. Another big area is metadata enrichment. So if you want to add finding aids or just better metadata, or do any other really clever stuff, and I'll come on to some clever things that you might want to do to add extra metadata to the system. Well, you can read the metadata of the objects, or indeed the files themselves, download those. You can then do some sort of clever stuff on it. Think, oh, right, well, actually, that means I can update the metadata field on that object and send the new change back in. And that's all done outside of the system, so that you can do clever things without changing the system itself. Even if the system is in the cloud and is thousands of miles away, even if it is in a different continent. Not that it would be, in your case, it'd be in an American data room, but you can be on the other side of the union and still access the content via the program interfaces. That's why these program interfaces are so clever. They work really, really well. Okay, so that's programmer interfaces that add the flexibility to digital preservation systems to incorporate the creativity of the users without tying down the systems themselves and stopping them advancing. The next area, and we have used the programmer interfaces, and having used Preservica, we thought, how can we use those? And the area we came across was getting information into the system from wherever it is automatically using content harvesting techniques. Now, this, I think, is one of the biggest stumbling blocks. Well, certainly when we met some of you at the CoSA meeting in Washington, D.C. in August, it was an area of real concern that the information is held in SharePoint or OpenText or FileNet or on the file systems by the state agencies, but it's really, really difficult to transfer it out of those into the preservation system without huge amounts of manual effort. So what we're looking at here is how can we automatically identify and transfer content out of those systems and put them into a preservation system. Now, what you're talking about here is using some sort of rules-based system to search, for example, SharePoint automatically to identify the content using those rules, and having identified the content, stick it straight in the preservation system without a human getting involved. All the archivist does in this case is write the rules, and then the system will work without adult supervision. So what I'm going to do now is show you a video of this in action, and I hope it comes across okay across the internet, but just show you the sort of prototypes that we're working on. I hasten to add, this is a prototype, so it's something that will look pretty when we've finished it. It doesn't look pretty now, but it just shows you the sort of thing we're doing. So, Becky, can I ask you to, kick off the video, please? Today we're going to be looking at a prototype feature that's coming in the next release of Preservica that allows data to be transferred directly out of SharePoint and into Preservica. We can see here a SharePoint database in which there's Thank you. Okay, thanks. I understand a few of you may have had audio problems there. I think what I was trying to show was that by changing the data in SharePoint, the transfer program was able to find it and send it automatically into Preservica with no human intervention apart from changing stuff in SharePoint. And that's the idea, is that we could write rules for other systems as well. We could write rule for Twitter. And I believe some of you have seen my my proud history of the Commander-in-Chief and his Twitter trails. Joking apart, those are presidential records and are important documents as far as history is concerned, the history of the administration. But the governor records will also be, governor tweets will also be records, and those should be harvested automatically. So this automatic harvesting of content is a critical part of the future of digital preservation, and one that we're going to be building on more and more and more. So you could build that sort of system into your SharePoint or your OpenText or your FileNet or whatever. You could write a rule to once a day go through the system, see what it finds, find anything that's changed, and send it into your preservation system. And all you've got to rely on there, and this is a big rely, is that the metadata is correct in the source system. If the metadata is not correct in the source system is probably the best place to fix that, rather than doing it once it's arrived in the preservation system. Okay, so thanks very much. The key thing here, the next thing is we're getting huge volumes of data. And so we're having to deal with tidal waves of information as it comes through. This means that we may not want to keep it all. If we're suddenly saying, get everything that's dumped on the file server in this folder, or get everything out of SharePoint, or getting everything, there's huge amounts of information that's coming through, particularly with email. And so what we are looking at here is how can we automatically classify that information for a number of purposes. And so one of the purposes might be just to create better finding aids, to create information that allows us to find the relevant documents and to enrich those appropriately. But another thing might be to say, do we want it in the archive at all? Or do we want to get it when we might otherwise have not put it in? And this involves using artificial intelligence techniques, which a lot of people are talking about, but a lot of people are doing research projects on them, but I don't think the trust is yet developed. But there's some really, really fascinating research being done. One of the examples is a project which I believe has been presented to CoSA members last year, and is now coming into reality, which is work in Illinois on using predictive coding, so machine learning, to decide whether emails from the administration go into the archive or not. And there was a really excellent paper at IPRES in Boston, Massachusetts recently on how techniques are being used to trawl through the emails to say this is what the archive thinks, the archivist rather thinks should go in. And there was a long history of many years of decisions that had been made for the software to try and work out what rules the archivist applied to decide that. And then to make its own decisions, to say, okay, well, using what I think the archivist decided, I'm going to say for the next 200, this is how I'm going to split it up. This 60 need keeping, this 140 need chucking away. And the archivist marks the software's homework. He says, yeah, that's mainly right, but actually, those 10 were wrong. You know, those 5 should have been kept, and those 5 shouldn't have been kept. Great, thanks. So I'll change my rules slightly and do another 200 and another 200. And so After 5,300 emails, which took a week, the system was then deemed to be well enough trained and was unleashed on 4.3 million emails, and 315,000 extra emails were identified as needing retaining. And over the top of the capstone rules or other ways of interpreting. And the hit rate was pretty good on those. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. It was about as good as archivists agree with each other. So Brent West, who spoke on this, said the hit rate was 70 to 80%. Archivists agree with each other 70 to 80% of the time. So it was good enough. And it was better than taking it all, which is impractical because then you're looking for a needle in a haystack, or just taking the capstone email addresses where you miss important emails in the body of other person-to-person communications that happened during that time. So this, we think, is going to be very, very important for the future of digital preservation. Doing this selective approach, or just taking all 4.3 million, but tagging 315,000 of them as important and all the rest of not important. And then saying, we'll keep the 315,000 forever, and the rest, just keep them for 5 years in case you made a mistake. And then recategorize them if people find things that are a mistake. So you're using digital preservation, using artificial intelligence for different purposes in this case. Okay, provenance and proof. Provenance and proof. Now, one of the key things about a digital preservation system is you've got to be able to trust it. And all of the digital preservation systems you can buy use various techniques to try and make it very difficult indeed to tamper with them. They use checksums, they store checksums in difficult to access places, and so on. But there are techniques available that add even more layers of difficulty to ensure that the content is not tampered with in any way. And we're now exploring how these can be plugged in to digital preservation systems to make sure that any object you get out long to the future, you know that if it has been tampered with, you'll know about it. So you're not making it any more tamper-proof, but you are making it tamper-evident. In other words, I know this has been tampered with. And there are two techniques that we're really looking at here. One is very buzzword-friendly blockchain technology. And there's currently the University of Surrey in the UK, working with the National Archives in the UK and various other partners, are looking at how a blockchain could be used to show that a file has been tampered with. So when you create a file, you calculate it, rather when you receive a file, you get its checksum, and you write that checksum onto the blockchain. And then it can never be changed. Changing something in a blockchain is virtually impossible because of some clever tricks they use. And so at any time in the future, you can say, when was that checksum added to the blockchain? That was added on the 16th of October at around about 2:40 p.m. or no, exactly 2:40 p.m. And that checksum was added. And that checksum can only ever be created by this file. So I know this file must have existed at that time and hasn't been changed at all since. There are other technologies that have been put in place, digital signing, public key infrastructures that are actually used by blockchains, which are also becoming popular and essentially do similar things, that you submit a checksum and that checksum is encrypted in some clever way, and in the future you can say, when was this checksum created? And it does the same thing as the blockchain. It gives you back a time and says, this is the time the checksum was created. And so you're able to prove that that file has not been manipulated. Now, these I see as add-ons to a preservation system. And the reason they're add-ons is these technologies, it's far from certain which one will still be around in 100 years' time. But that doesn't mean to say we don't have to try. You know, we can try at least to protect it for the lifetime of these technologies, and say for those technologies and whatever comes to follow them, we were confident that the objects were not changed in any way. And then people can trust it. When you submit those files to a court of law, you can prove beyond all reasonable doubt that those objects have not been manipulated since they were created. So this is a big part of the research that we're doing. Preservation best practice. So this is the last area I'm going to be talking about. Digital preservation at the moment, and particularly that relating to file format preservation, really is quite an expert's game. Now, whilst in Preservica we try and make it as easy as possible to apply the rules that you want, users still have to know a reasonable amount about what they're doing. So I want to run this workflow to create PDF versions of all the Word files I've got, and those are for access purposes. So the users have got to make those decisions. And really what we're saying is, how do we recommend the best decisions? What are the best ways of doing that? And B, how do we automatically apply that best practice? Now, one of the projects we're working on at the moment is a project called PAR, Preservation Action Registries, also known as Preservation Action Rules. It's called PAR because we have a lot of core entities, and so we've registered parcore.org, which we all thought was a great fund because everyone working about the least likely people to do any sort of urban gymnastics that you can imagine. So we've got to stick with PAR, whatever it stands for. And that is a collaboration between Preservica and Archivematica, and the Open Preservation Foundation, funded by JISC, the UK research support organisation, to exchange information between our two systems. So I can say to an Archivematica user, so what are you doing with these images? Oh, we're using this tool to migrate it to this format. Interesting. What parameters are you using? Well, we're doing this. That's a bit different to us. What are we doing? Yeah, actually, I think they've got a good point. Let's update our advice. So we can exchange information between practitioners all around the world. And in time, this will give us the ability to agree what best practice is. Now, that's not what we're doing in the first phase. The first phase is just exchange the information. But what that will enable us to do is, first of all, to get best practice from experts, from Archivematica users, Preservica users, people doing clever new stuff, to update our base rules and to push that out to people who just want to accept whatever, accept defaults. Whatever Preservica says, that's fine. Now, not all users want to do that, and not all users have to do that. But for those that do, this is a great step forward because they can now automatically follow these rules. They could say, the rules say, if you want to access Word documents, always create a PDF. So every time I load a PDF, a Word file, create a PDF, because that's the rule. And so we can start to automatically apply digital preservation techniques because A, we can distribute them live, and B, we have a lot more confidence that those rules are genuinely community agreed. And that brings me on to my next point, which is community cooperation. A lot of these initiatives need us all to share information management challenges, ideas and solutions so that we can get the best digital preservation we want. We're going to be at the heart of this, but we don't want to be bossing everyone. We want to be an active partner in the community. So a lot of the things relating to, for example, how do you identify the stuff out of SharePoint? Is crawling ever going to work, or should we use, is it that our database is just too big for that to work? Where else do you want to get data from? Where else is it held? And has anyone got any clever tricks for getting stuff out of Facebook using the APIs without getting dragged in front of a Senate committee? And what other techniques are used to prepare information and present it to people in a clever format that really works for everyone? So this community cooperation is something we're fostering, as you can see from our work with Artifactual. We want to be a collaborative partner in this and to work this together. So, in summary, demands of digital information management and access are accelerating. They're accelerating change and they're increasing investment. So this is good news because a lot more people are using digital preservation. There's more money around to spend on it. Products continue to evolve and they're delivering new features, all of them. Us, our competitors, everyone, new entrants, everyone's doing some clever stuff. But what we need is automation and ease of use. Those are the key things that will really change digital preservation for the better and for everyone. And that will help administrators and users of all types, of all repositories, to really get the digital preservation systems that they really are yearning for. So they're not far away, and this fully connected, plugged-in digital preservation future that I described is just coming over the horizon now and really will be a reality pretty soon. Okay, that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you for hanging in there. Sorry, there's a few audio problems during the video. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to answer? I saw one question there about SIP, which is also a very Preservica specific question. So yes, you don't have to have a SIP creator. This is all done automatically under the bonnet. So whether it uses a SIP creator or not, you don't know about it. It's purely automatic transfer.
Okay,
so does anyone
Thank you, Laurie and John. That's really great. And you were answering the question about the SIP creator step, and that means that was a Preservica specific question you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's great. We appreciate that. Anybody else who has questions, we would welcome you to enter them. They can be about Preservica or the general topics that have been discussed today. Please enter them in the chat box so everyone can see, and we'll be glad to ask that. I have one pretty basic question, John. You were mentioning a while back that some of what you were looking at was going to be, you hoped, in the next release of Preservica. Do you have a general idea of when that next release will be put out?
I believe the content harvesting stuff I mentioned will be coming in spring. In fact, I know it is because I'm just transferring my stuff to engineering to be released then. So that'll be early in 2019. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get a follow-up on that. Let's see, did anybody else have any other questions that we would like to ask? We've still got a few minutes in our question period. What I'd really be interested in is where the content is that you want to preserve. You know, is it in SharePoint, or is it somewhere exotic, or is it somewhere basic? You know, where are we taking content forward to preserve? I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, that is a good question. Maybe some of our participants could name some of the systems of interest to them as part of their questions.
So there's a comment here about emails in IQ. Email accessioning can usually be done by programming interfaces that are often shared. So there are quite good standards on emails to say, let me go to that mailbox and intercept that email. I think the difficult thing is fairly quickly deciding which emails. And if you're using a capstone approach of named accounts and saying, I want all the governor's emails, then it's relatively straightforward to do that. If you're trying to go through all emails in the system live and apply some AI technique to filter those, then obviously it's a little bit more complicated. But accessing emails themselves have fairly well-established protocols to be able to automatically pull those in. It's agreeing the rules that's the difficult bit.
You were talking before about writing rules in some of the systems. Is that something that the average user feels confident about doing?
We're currently working with users to understand what sort of, how they would identify things of archival interest. Do they say anything in this folder or anything in this record series I want to take? Do they use the extra columns, for example, you can add in SharePoint and the contents of those? Do they trust those? Do users actually keep them up to date with good enough quality to be able to have confidence that we can interpret the rules? And it's a pretty mixed result at the moment. Many archivists have a fairly low opinion of the content manager's ability to maintain the quality of the content. Some of them don't know, and some of them, it really forces a dialogue between the archivist and the content owner to really try and articulate in a machine readable form how we would interpret where to get things from. So I think in many cases that's where things are, is it's forcing a dialogue between people, which is a good step forward.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And as you say, the cooperation is going to be one of the important points going forward. Anyone else have any systems that they would like to question about, or any other questions related to the topics we've discussed today?
I'd be interested to know if anyone would trust artificial intelligence with their collection. That's yeah. Would you really? Because I think in the future you will, because you won't have a choice, because you're not going to go through 4.3 million emails yourself. But it's a big step up, I know that.
Okay, we have another question here. Each agency is different. Has Preservica worked with any installations that have agencies wanting to send records each night or week through polling?
No, I think that's something we are still learning. So I think we'd have to go through the detail of that. Not so far, but we're still exploring exactly how people would do that. But we're very happy to discuss exactly what that case is, and to find out more and how it maps onto what we're doing.
Ask everyone one last chance. Anybody else would like to send a question through the chat box? We prefer if you could do that, or Q&A, but the chat box allows everyone to see it. Any other questions we have as we get closer to wrapping up? Well, it looks like that's going to be the conclusion for our comments today, and I just want to thank Lori and John for fascinating information on all the things that are continuing to change technology and the challenges that we are facing with the digital preservation. And I think it's great to have this conversation and talk about these things. So we're going to move on to our upcoming webinars and other announcements. I want to remind everyone in attendance, we have one more regular member webinar for 2018, and that's going to be Thursday, October 25th. That's Mentoring Future Leaders, and those are the award winners of the Walsh Award at the recent meeting, and also the Leadership Award. And they're going to be giving their presentations on October 25th, so we encourage you to tune in for that. We are currently working on our next joint webinar with National Archives. It's going to be coming in December. The topic is going to be records management and scheduling, and this is also following up on the presentation at the annual meeting in August. at the Great Ideas Exchange that was featured then. The presenters are going to be National Archives staff and staff from the State Archives of North Carolina. So we know that's going to be an interesting webinar as well, and we will give you more information on that as we make those plans. Let's see if we can go forward here. This was the third of our Shop Talk webinars from our major sponsors. Last fall, we had one from Family Search. Last month, Ancestry. Today, Preservica. We have one more scheduled coming up just about a month from now, November 15th, and that will be Apex. There will be more information coming out on that as well, and we encourage you to tune in for that one as well. And all of these Shop Talk webinars have been very interesting with the information that our sponsors have shared with CoSA members. Stay connected and informed. Don't forget about the ways to do that, the CoSA website, the Resource Center on the CoSA website. You see the addresses being provided here. Our social media accounts are very active. I guess that's something we'll have to look at, all that preservation going forward. The CoSA Twitter handle at State Archivist, and the CoSA Facebook page, facebook.com/Council of State Archivists. We're celebrating Archives Month, so there's a lot of good information. Celebration all month long in October. We really do appreciate your feedback. We are currently talking about what are we going to do for this upcoming new year for webinars, and we would love to get information from you. After you exit the webinar, you will automatically be taken to an online webinar evaluation. Please take just a couple of minutes to complete that survey, give us that information to help us plan future webinars. So that concludes our presentation today. Once again, so many thanks to Lori Ashley and John Tilbury for an interesting information on Preservica and the case studies relating to the preservation of our digital assets. Thank you, and we'll say good day for today. Thank you again.